Corbin Burnes is going to the defending AL East champion Baltimore Orioles as the former Brewers Cy Young Award winner was dealt on Thursday for infielder Joey Ortiz, left-handed pitcher DL Hall, and the 34th pick in the 2024 draft. Burnes is heading to the Baltimore Orioles rotation, and the Orioles are now looking even more dangerous than ever going into this 2024 season. So, Taylor, what do you think about Corbin Burnes being a Baltimore Oriole?
Man, it's the trade that everyone has been asking them to make for years? I feel like it's been years of people being like, you have the prospects, you need the pitching. It's a simple equation. It's resource reallocation. And they finally did it. And they did it at the perfect time. And between this and the news that the Angelos family is planning to sell their majority share, it kind of feels like they're becoming the team to beat in the AL, or becoming one of the teams to beat all of a sudden. And, a lot of people are also saying that the Orioles kind of fleeced the Brewers in this trade. That was a big reaction I saw. When you see the Jeff Passan's tweet of this is happening, which is the only person that you should trust when on Twitter of people saying that something is happening according to sources, he's the only guy you should trust. So when I look through his comments and I see everybody being like, Orioles fleeced them, I kind of didn't agree, because the package you just described has basically been the going rate for top tier starters with a year or a year and a half control over the past couple of years. I mean, you look back at Luis Castillo, even recently, Tyler Glasnow, Justin Verlander, which we just talked about in our last episode of that trade when the Astros got him back from the Mets at the deadline. Max Scherzer, it's usually a top 100 guy, another guy that's fringe top 100, and then it's either a third guy, or in this case, a competitive balance pick. I know, I always get those mixed up. And this is also just a fun reminder that you can trade certain draft picks in baseball. And I always forget that until it pops up again. And then I remember. Joey Ortiz wasn't going to really be breaking that starting lineup, I don't think. And even if he was, it was going to be more as a depth guy. He's great with the glove, but they've got Jackson Holliday coming up. They've got Gunnar Henderson on the roster. They don't need Joey Ortiz. And DL Hall is kind of in a similar place where he was sort of a failed experiment by the Orioles, as a starting pitcher. But he was also proving himself to have a good ceiling as a reliever. But I kind of like both of those players more on the Brewers anyway. This is a better move for them. It's a better spot for them to be, because they're actually going to get opportunities to play. DL Hall it looks like he might actually get another chance to start, which is great for him. And then, right now, the competitive balance pick is a lot more valuable for the Brewers than it is the Orioles. They don't need any more picks right now, really. So I think this is a great trade for both sides. And I think this is pretty much the package you would expect to see. Obviously there's not much to say about the Orioles return in Burnes. This is a best case scenario for them, top 10 Cy Young the past 4 seasons. He won it in 2021. Last season was maybe a tiny step back for him numbers wise, if you really want to be nitpicky. But even a step back for Burnes is still a borderline top 10 pitcher in baseball. So no complaints there. Really the only difference is, he had a slightly higher walk rate, but he still limited hard contact at the elite level we expect from Corbin Burnes. And there's always that fun effect that adding an ace like Burnes has on a rotation for the eye test, because it's you looked at the Orioles rotation before and, it was Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, John Means, Dean Kramer, Tyler Wells. And it's that's fine. That'll play over a regular season, but you get into the playoffs and, you're the opposing team and you're looking at that. You're we can win this series. But now you put Burnes on top of that. Now all of a sudden, all of those guys look exponentially better. Bradish is a great 2. Rodriguez is a great 3 to have. Means in the 4 spot. I mean, that's obviously he's got some question marks, but who cares? He's your 4. You can afford to do that. So I think that's a great effect for them. And obviously there was some bad blood too between Burnes and the Brewers after that arbitration hearing he had. So I think he's also kind of excited to get out of there a little bit. And the other thing I thought about here is the implications to the Dylan Cease trade market, because all the reports are saying the White Sox have been asking for I think the quote was the sun and moon for Dylan Cease, which who knows what that really means. And obviously Dylan Cease has 2 years in control remaining, whereas this is just a rental for 1 year unless they extend Burnes. But now teams can come back to the White Sox and be like, No. You can't ask for that. We know what Corbin Burnes is worth in the market right now. You can extrapolate one more year of control, and that's what we're going to give you for Cease. And the White Sox kind of don't have a rebuttal to that at this point. So
Right.
I think there's a chance we might see him move in the near future as well. Now that the starting pitching trade market has been like very much established. I know the thing that was on our minds as Yankees fans was, that's not good, because with how tight that division is going to be this year, that's a difference-making move for the Orioles. Like, the Yankees went out and had a big offseason, obviously, getting Soto, Stroman, Verdugo. This move is a counter to that, and it's a good counter. It's a real good counter. We're going to see some battles between them this year. But so all good on the Orioles side. Milwaukee's side is a little bit more interesting, where they just signed Rhys Hoskins to that two-year deal. You kind of think like, oh, they're still going to go for it. Like, there was a lot of talk about them sort of emptying their team a little bit, trading away Willy Adames, Corbin Burnes, kind of that whole group of guys. And now they're kind of going into the year without that three-headed monster that's made them so dominant in the rotation of Peralta, Burnes, and Woodruff. And it's still a decent rotation, but now they're having the inverse effect that I just described as the Orioles, where they had a pretty solid rotation. When you look at the top and see Corbin Burnes, you take that away. Now it doesn't look very good on paper, but I think they're still going to be okay. And they still got Devin Williams in the back end. So like, they've still got okay pitching. But it seems like their strategy is kind of like, we're just kind of gonna accrue all these younger, big league ready or almost big league ready guys to build around their newly extended Jackson Chourio. I think he's the number 2 prospect in all of baseball in the new rankings they just came out with. And they still have William Contreras and Sal Frelick, also a young stud. And it's like, it just seems like they're trying to gather those young pieces to build around those guys. So from that perspective, I do understand it. So ultimately, like, I think it's a win-win for both teams. And really, like, with Joey Ortiz, if he can shroud a little bit, that gives them the flexibility to then go out and trade Adames at the trade deadline if they want to. So I think that's great for them, but it definitely has shifted my perspective on what I think their goal is this year.
Yeah, I thought this trade was really interesting from the Brewers' perspective, because over the years, they've made a lot of moves that like seemed strange at the time. I don't know if you remember. You probably remember, Taylor, the Josh Hader trade, where they were still in contention. They might have still been in first place, and they traded Josh Hader. But I think a lot of those moves that they've made have kind of panned out for them in the long run. Like trading Hader basically got them the prospect that led them to getting William Contreras. And then this trade, obviously, they net the 34th pick, a young infielder who's going to play for them, and Hall, who's got a lot of upside. So I think it's definitely good for them, considering we knew Burnes was not going to re-sign with them. Like, we knew he wasn't going to re-sign there. We knew Burnes was going to go get big money from somewhere else. And we also knew this isn't a championship roster. And I think they knew that too when they were trading away Josh Hader. They're like, listen, we don't have the roster for this right now. And certainly they knew that while trading Burnes away this year. And I think, like you talked about with Rhys Hoskins and Willy Adames, like, trading them at the deadline isn't off the table, because you get them, you get to the deadline, a playoff team is going to want a Rhys Hoskins. Like, we've seen what Rhys Hoskins can do in the playoffs. You're going to want him. A playoff team is going to want a power hitting shortstop, a guy who can hit 30 home runs in a season like Willy Adames, So I think that is going to be, it's going to be interesting to kind of see where they go from there. But I think they've been offloading a lot of big league talent, obviously, to get cheaper and deeper in the farm system. And they've done that. And I mean, now they're, according to Baseball America, they're the number 2 farm system in all of baseball. So they've done a really nice job of getting younger and developing the farm. So I'm with you, Taylor. I don't think this is a fleece at all. I think they kind of got what they were supposed to get, and I think they've done a really good job at that. But do you want to know who the number 1 best farm system in Baseball America's rankings was, even after this Corbin Burnes trade? The Baltimore Orioles, man. This team, I told you before the episode, Taylor, my first thought was, God damn it. Like, this team is not only terrifying for the future, because like I said, they have the number 1 farm system in baseball by a wide margin too. It's really not close. Like, you listen to any of the scouting services talk about who the best farm system in baseballs are. It's the Baltimore Orioles. And then it's like everybody else is like 2 or 3 tiers below. It's like I said, it's by a wide margin. That's why you can trade a young infielder like Ortiz for Burnes, because they already have Henderson, Urias, Jordan Westburg, obviously the number 1 prospect in baseball, Jackson Holliday as well. well as a couple other top 100 high-level infield prospects. So essentially, they lose a guy who's not going to play for them. And DL Hall, like you said, Taylor, he's shown some promise, especially as a bullpen arm. But I don't know if he was going to make a huge impact for this year. And then one draft pick for one of the best pitchers in baseball, without a doubt. Here's Corbin Burnes' ranks since 2020 in these stats. He's second in WAR, according to Fangraphs, 17.9, fifth in ERA, 2.86, third in FIP, 2.84, fifth in innings pitched as well, 622 in the third innings over the last 4 seasons, and then seventh in strikeout rate, 11.06 strikeouts per 9 innings. He won 1 Cy Young and was top 10 each of the other 3 years. This guy is dominant. He's an ace. He's a front of the line rotation guy. And like you said, Taylor, that's exactly what the Baltimore Orioles needed. You pair him with Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez, who are number 1 and number 3 in the AL respectively in ERA over the second half of the season last year. They came on in the second half of the year. Plus, even though he's a free agent, I don't know, maybe he likes Baltimore because of that massive wall in left field. You aren't going to give up a bunch of bombs to left field anymore, So you got to hit a 450-foot bomb to get it out in left field. So maybe that's kind of what the Orioles strategy was in, pushing it back, and it might work out, getting Corbin Burnes. So that's going to make his numbers look even better. Maybe he wins a Cy Young and, pitches deep in the playoffs. And I think this is just a massive win for the Orioles. And I think it's good for the Brewers too. I don't understand all the hate from the Brewers perspective, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like you talked about, Taylor, from a Yankees fan perspective, my first thought was, God, come on, man. Just when we started to figure things out, they go get Corbin Burnes. It's like, shit, man.
Yeah. Yeah. As if the AL East couldn't get any tougher,
man,
going forward. It's
whole division nonstop. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, it's, man, I'm like you talked about though, Taylor, I'm just really excited to watch these games. I'm just really excited to see the Orioles Yankees series in September. Hopefully it's within, 2 or 3 games and they're going at it and it feels like a playoff series. And, obviously now it's hope because as a Yankees fan, you don't know after last year, maybe we're not in that situation, but yeah, that's what I'm hoping for at the end of the year.
So, Matt, about a week ago, I checked out the Orioles over-under win total, and it was set at 88.5. So that's
no way,
Burnes.
Really?
It was pretty low, and I took that over, and I'm much happier about that now that they have Burnes. I'm looking it up right now. Do you have any guesses as to what it has moved to now?
I was gonna say 91.5.
Oh, really good guess. 90.5.
Yeah,
and the under is juiced -120. That's interesting.
Wow. That is interesting.
That's interesting because, I don't know, from my perspective, I was looking at that number and being like, well, this kind of doesn't add up because the Orioles are kind of expected to be a top 3 or 4 team in the AL. Right. And to me, a top 3 or 4 team in the AL is going to win more than 88 games. And now I think you can't even argue that they are a top 3 team in the AL. I think Burnes, it makes them it's not an argument. They're a top 3 team.
Without a doubt. I think they're due for, you look at their run differential last year, I think they're due for a little bit of a regression as far as that goes. They won a lot of one-run games, and it's because their bullpen's so good, and they're going to be missing Bautista for the whole year, which is huge. So I think that's kind of what the line was based on. Like, hey, they kind of played a little bit over their skis a little bit last year. They're going to fall back a little bit, but yeah, now with,
I think that's a little bit of, I think that's expecting too much regression almost.
Right.
For me.
100%.
Because I agree. I looked at that line and it was like, that seems a little odd to me. But then I thought about what you just said. And it's like, well, they don't have Bautista. And he was, outside of one at bat with Kyle Tucker, where he won the game on his own. Go check out that episode of Limited Time Offerings for that at bat. But outside of basically that one game, he was an automatic save for them. And, even when he went down, they had Cano to fill in for him. And it's like, yeah, they got Kimbrel, but, ask any Phillies fan how good Craig Kimbrel was.
That's not Craig Kimbrel anymore.
It's not.
Craig Kimbrel.
Yeah. And it's like, I think he'll be a positive influence in that bullpen for sure. But I don't know if I'm going to trust him in a 1-run game at Yankee Stadium.
No,
against the Yankees.
I would not.
So
I would not, especially with all the lefties we just got. You feel me?
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust them in that situation, you know? So yeah, like you said, I think they are due for some regression, but I mean, you just look at the names and the talent on that team. Now you add Corbin Burnes. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to bet the under on that? I'm not going to bet the under on that. Like even at 90.5, I'm betting the over.
No, I would still take that over for sure.
Like, yeah, I think they're easily around 94, 95 wins this year, you know? So yeah, I'll take that over 10 times out of 10.